At a time when Israel's war on Gaza is directly increasing tensions in the Gulf region, Russia, China and Iran have also come to the area to show off their marine capabilities. The three countries have carried out joint naval drills in the Gulf of Oman, a crucial waterway near the mouth of the Persian Gulf. The Russian Defense Ministry said the goal of the exercises was to improve the safety of maritime economic activity. What's been called the Maritime Security Belt 2024 is the fourth drill by Russia, China and Iran since 2019. The three allies deployed more than 20 ships as well as naval helicopters as part of the exercise that comes as British and US forces continue to launch airstrikes on Iran-backed Houthis. The Yemeni rebels started targeting commercial ships in the Red Sea after Israel started its war on Gaza in October. Meanwhile, a NATO drill in Finland, Norway, and new member Sweden was also underway in the past week. Stockholm and Helsinki had applied to join the US-led military alliance after the Russian invasion of Ukraine in 2022. And to discuss the naval drills by China, Iran and Russia, joining me now from Geneva is Abdurrasol Dibsallar. He is a non-resident scholar at the Middle East Institute. And from Beijing, Andy Mock, a senior research fellow at the Center for China and Globalization. Gentlemen, welcome to Straight Talk. It's good to have you on the program. So, Andy, although these drills are part of a common military exercise among China, Iran and Russia, is there any significance to their timing, which come amid heightened tensions in the region?
I think certainly the timing of this is indeed very significant, Aisha. So in addition to the unfortunate events in Gaza that have the risk of spiraling into a regional conflict, there's escalating tensions all around the world, in Ukraine, in the South China Sea. So I think this latest naval drills are a very important symbol of the importance that these three countries place on promoting regional security, a multipolar order, as well as an alternative to a Western-led world.
Mm-hmm. So, and Abdurrasol, what do you think? I mean, what's your take on those naval drills and what are they aimed to achieve?
Well, I agree about the timing and importance of that, but I think we need to also consider that these drills, the first year that they are started was in 2019, and also at that time, there was a lot of tension between Iran and US and especially also Saudi Arabia and UAE, and always these sort of attempt to link it with the regional dynamics might be valuable, but I think I would prefer to not over-exaggerate that, in a sense that I think this seems to me, after 5 years of doing that sort of drills, seems to me a sort of long-term plan by China, Russia, and Iran to show that there are alternatives to the Western approach to regional security. And basically that should be seen in their broader attempt to sort of bringing in their own vision of how the global crisis and the global dynamics should be managed.
So, Andy, could these drills be construed as a show of force by these nations against the US-led naval coalition operating in the Red Sea since last December?
I think it indeed can, and I completely agree with the comments just made that this is not something that is happening in response to one particular current event, but this has been going on for years, and I think is a recognition that the world is changing, and I think the Chinese formulation is changes unseen in a century. So we see, of course, a closer relationship between China and Russia, which again is not entirely new. We also see this strategic partnership between China and Iran. So I think there is some symbolic value given current events, but this is also a very real building of capability, interoperability, developing the experience to work together in a truly multilateral way in an increasingly multipolar world.
So, Abdul China has also held joint exercises with the United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, and other regional partners in the past. So what does that tell us about Beijing's influence in the region?
Well, that's a very interesting point because I think China is very much trying to present itself as a security partner and as a reliable interlocutor in many regional security challenges or crises that we may see in the region. And you can see that by the, let's say, Chinese mediated deal that there was reached between Saudi Arabia and Iran, that China took this sort of role and responsibility to enter and put its weight, political weight, over a resolution of the regional issues. And from this perspective, I think Chinese have an understanding that they need to be able to work with every regional actor, and that they should just send a signal that working with Iranians on such a delicate matter does not mean that they are not willing or to work with others, or this cooperation is against any of other regional actors. And this sort of balancing between different regional players is basically tries to send this signal that China is ready to work with many, as much possible, many countries in the region. The same way, I think, as how Russians are seeing that.
So, Andy, is there any significance to the location of these drills, which take place near the entrance to the Persian Gulf, from where much of the world's oil reserves actually originate?
I think that's exactly right, isn't it? That this is such a strategic waterway that not only the world, but I think China as well as North Asia, Japan, and the Republic of Korea also rely on energy supplies from West Asia or the Middle East. So I think certainly this is a very strategic area. We also have to recognize, too, that given some of these shifting definitions, the Indo-Pacific, for example, that this also, I think, adds another layer of significance to the trade flows that you mentioned.
So, Abdul, what can you tell us about the Chinese position towards NATO's expansion, as well as the latest tensions between Russia and the West over a nuclear war?
Well, I think it's hard to link this drill with those developments. I assume that China very much has a clear stand on that. Chinese, I think, are trying to build up forces to counter possible advancements of the NATO toward their region, or any sort of alliance that might end up against Chinese interests in their region. But about Russia and the possibility of a nuclear war, I assume that linkage is not really precise, given the fact that Russians are very much interested to use their nuclear apparatus to contain the war in Ukraine and to prevent possible any sort of a NATO direct intervention into the developments in Ukraine.
So, Andy, what do you make of Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan, Oman, Pakistan, and especially South Africa's presence as observers at these drills?
Well, I think this is significant in that it shows, again, this inevitable transition to a truly multipolar world. And I think it also shows the level of concern the conflict in this part of the world is causing. So we have to remember that the energy market is a global one. So if there's a local disruption in areas that are sources of significant production, this can have ramifications worldwide, especially on developing countries that have to buy their energy and are denominated in dollars as well. So I think this is a challenging time with the conflict, as well as higher interest rates, inflation. So this is, I think, developments that countries around the world, especially in the global south, are watching very, very closely.
So, Abdul, could these drills among China, Iran, and Russia expand and turn into a new naval coalition?
Well, I don't think so that that's a very near possibility in the near future because of the limits of such operations. There are certain limits, as we discussed before. One of them is the fact that both Russia and China wants to work with everyone. They don't want to enter into a sort of coalition that would be perceived by other regional actors against them. The second limit is the fact that these states have different threat perceptions. I mean, the reason or the objective that they are coming for such an operation, for such a drill or coalition, is not united like what we see in the Western countries. For example, when we discuss about maritime coalitions by Western countries in the region, everyone is focused on certain threats. However, in this case of Russia, China, and Iran, I think the perception of threat very much that is coming from the maritime security is different, and that puts a limit to the extent that they can cooperate. And you can see that by the duration of these operations. They are usually short. They come for a short period of time, and they are then postponed until the next year. So they are not sort of long-term coalitions. So at this moment, I don't see that as a newer possibility.
So, Andy, what do you think is the reason? Is the region poised for future risks?
Well, certainly there's a lot of concern about the escalation of the conflict in Gaza and whether that can spread into a regional conflict. Ukraine, of course, is still a great concern. What's going on in Taiwan, the South China Sea as well. So I think that from the Chinese perspective, and very likely from the Iranian and the Russian perspective as well, that these countries see an increase in destabilizing, provocative actions in these separate geographical regions, but I think still call for some sort of coordinated and unified response. I think there's a law of physics is that for every action, there's a reaction. So I think this is partly because of this, but we also should recognize, again, that this is not something that's brand new,
yes,
but has been several years in the making as well.
All right, gentlemen, unfortunately, we'll have to leave it here. Thank you very much for joining me on Straight Talk.